Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 9 of the anime series Gangsta. And this was just all kinds of compelling and intriguing, and we had certain elements of the heartening nature of the story of the previous episode carrying over into this one. Very much was it titled Siblings, and I had put forth some ideas as to what that might amount to. Little could I have guessed how it would actually play out, and I did pick up on certain things, but I mean, this was just an incredible episode, picking very much up in the wake of the aftermath, if you will, of, Alex's inaugural performance in Club Bastard, and we see that one of the Twilights amongst the group of them who've been seeking a sort of safe haven against these anti-Twilight movements, one of them has had their mind bent through blackmail, and sort of this cat Ivan put a knife to his, I'm assuming it's his daughter's throat, and told him basically, if you don't want to see the life of your loved one cut short, you're going to go after Loretta Cristiano. You're going to take down, for the purposes of this anti-Twilight movement, you're going to take down sort of the figurehead of it, in a sense. And the Ivan character has been a standout character to me in that we've seen him from the get-go, from the very beginning, and I've always sort of almost confused him borderline for being Monroe. He looks kind of in character design aesthetic. He looks very much like a younger Monroe, and I thought perhaps maybe they were related, and I'm forgetting actually whether or not that could be the case. I don't think so, but this character, we've seen him talking in shadowy back alleys with somebody whom I believe to be Corsica, by the end of this episode, is sort of the leader of this anti-Twilight movement we have revealed to us. And a large chunk, the crux of this episode, is the action sequence unfolding in Club Bastard, as, of course, you have these two children, or whatever they are, a teenager and a child, Erica and Mikhail, coming in and just wreaking havoc. They've slaughtered so many of the Twilights who were trying to escape the club. Warwick gets word of this from one of them who's managed to get away, and he sends up the flare of warning, trying to call in some backup. And I love that the backup, the cavalry kind of comes in the form of Doug and Ginger and everything. But the entire time you're seeing, Loretta's sort of Twilight underlings, if you will, Marco and Galahad, just kicking all kinds of ass. I'm not even sure. They say that Marco might not even be a Twilight, and I don't remember whether or not he is off the top of my head, but he is definitely sort of, Deckham-like, for people who know of Death Parade, with all the strings, the wiry webbing thing that he utilizes to take down mostly Mikhail in this fight. And we see that, as Loretta is trying to spirit away Alex, Alex becomes almost maternal protector to her. She very much intervenes when it seems like Erica has Loretta, cornered at one point. She's firing a gun at her, and she can hit all these bullets away with her katana blade and all that kind of stuff. And just as she's about to lunge at Alex, you have Nick showing up just in time. And it's very intriguing to me, amidst the just, burgeoning emotional and action-oriented, this whole sequence, that, we basically have this bomb drop concept from Galahad that, Nick is a faker. And you're wondering what that means. Alex, of course, is wondering what that means. And it all has to do with, much as we, the viewer, know, Nick has been overdosing on this celebra drug or whatever it is to make himself uber powerful. This is what saw him standing toe-to-toe with Doug and other such, Twilight's tags, if you will, which is insane because they're saying he should only be about a B5. And it's like, man, what the hell is he doing? I mean, this is the utmost thing about his character from the get-go. He's very much devil may care. He doesn't really think of the consequences, and he doesn't seem to have much reason to, with the idea of this threat against Twilights, his people, his kind, if you will, never seeming backing down. The rules were implemented to keep them in line, more so than to seemingly protect them, even though you do have people like Monroe and the Cristiano Syndicate trying to be at the crux of a safety zone, a safety net for Twilights and everything. But of course, as soon as you have the meeting, the face-to-face encounter between Nick and Erica, he immediately zones in on how familiar she looks to Delico. And it was just like, suddenly that conversation between Delico and Warwick a couple episodes back now was that much more impactful. And the way Delico, during the entire fight with like Nick and Doug, that's kind of where we saw him spotlighted, just almost with an aggressive expression, watching the entirety of this fight between Nick and Doug, and seeming almost judgmental or perhaps concerned with something. I think that's what I pointed out. He was concerned with something that we didn't necessarily get a beat on until this revelation, that it's his younger sister. And she is part of the anti-Twilight movement. She very much has abilities of her own, and through conversing in the comments with viewers and such, which, you know, is a highlight of my talking about these series, I've learned that there are Twilights that do not, you know, need essentially the drug to enhance their abilities or to give them the abilities, and they don't need the drug to keep them sort of in line. You know, they can operate with powers and abilities and just, they're fine. They can just deal with it. It's part of their natural compunction, their natural process. And so with Nick realizing this, he pauses. He's given to pause in this moment. And of course, Mikhail starts to try to go after Loretta and everyone who's making their escape, Alex and everything. And Nick gets in the way of that. And because of Warwick's shooting off this flare and calling in effectively backup, as I say, you have Ginger and Doug showing up in the nick of time to at least halt the ongoing ensuing battle that's unfolding in this Club Bastard. And it's just insane because Warwick also gets a hint. At first he thinks it's Delico, and then he realizes, oh damn, it's Delico's sister. Now I have to go and call him. I have to let him know. You know, he's saying to Chad, before we do anything, before I explain anything, get me a phone. I really got to put a call in to Delico. And the weight of that, the idea that the siblings, it was a revelation far beyond what I would have assumed. I had thought it had to do largely with, you know, this Erica and Mikhail being sort of foremost in this episode. I had assumed them to be brother and sister, but I don't necessarily think that's the case by the end of this, of course, because her brother is Delico, obviously. But I had thought it was going to be parallels of their cropping up in the series full form, full mast, as they do in this episode, as well as the parallel of, you know, Alex's own brother, who we assumed most, from what I'm hearing, people were in agreement with me that that was probably this hooded cat who was coming in to the city and everything. And sure enough, by the end of this episode, that's the one thing I did get right. It was fairly obvious, so it's not like I guessed, you know, correctly out of a bunch of different probabilities and, you know, nothing to boast about. It's just, yes, indeed, it was Emilio Benedetto, her brother. But the thing about that is another just absolutely tantamount disheartening in a sense, disquieting revelation, because he's now part of this anti-Twilight movement, the Esminets or whatever they're called, who is seemingly led by Corsica. You have Ivan in there, you have Erica and Mikhail, and they're, you know, Ivan's calling to find out who Warwick is in the equation, and I'm assuming, of course, Corsica would know. But it's very interesting to me now that the four heads amount to two sides of the same kind of equation. You know, you have Monroe and you have the Cristiano syndicates who are trying to protect and preserve the lives of these Twilights. And from within the same framework, you know, you have the Esminets, whatever it is, this anti-Twilight movement, where you have figureheads like Corsica, you have Ivan, who's supposed to be in league with Monroe. And then, of course, you have the Paul Klee Guild, which is just kind of its own thing. But, of course, they will be siding with the pro-Twilight movement, as we see Ginger and, you know, Doug, as I say, they are here to help. But then, of course, you have people on opposing sides. Now Alex's own brother will be against the people she's coming to accept and feel compassion toward, very much in the same way as Delico is one of these people. And now his own sister is against his side, in a sense, and, you know, the people who have been seemingly working for the good efforts to protect and save the lives of these Twilights, the Ivan character, and Corsica, who's been going along with it. I mean, there are turncoats and, you know, sort of snakes within this forest glade of this scenario, and they just want to watch it burn. They want to watch these people who they don't care for, they see as being so different and garbage among humanity, you know, just taken down and completely removed from the equation. And the drama will ensue. It already has, but it's, you know, it's been ensuing, but it will ensue that much more because of the personal relations, you know, on each side. It's kind of what the equivalent of the Captain America Civil War story should be about, where you care about, you know, factors on both of these sides, or you can relate to factors on both of these sides, very much as I've talked about with other series, as well as this one, the shades of gray that enter the equation. It's not just good versus evil, black versus white. There are many aspects that are a little more in the haze as far as what the hell is going on? Whose side should we be on? You know, do I feel for Delico that his sister has become this evil, ominous foe? But then, of course, I feel for her because what exactly turned her to this cause? How is this playing out this way? Same with the Twilights. These are people who have abilities who, you know, when they go rogue, they are rightfully feared, but then you're classifying the entire class, in a sense, for one kid who brought bubble gum. You know, for just the few that are doing wrong, you're enslaving an entire race or trying to slaughter an entire race. So, I mean, there are so many different aspects to the world in this environment that are utmost compelling, as I say. And by the end, of course, you have Erica and Mikhail taking off, and I thought it was just punctuated beautifully, melodramatically, or at least dramatically, but very dishearteningly, that we saw in the previous episode one of the key Twilights that Warwick was, you know, issuing into Bastard was this woman carrying a baby, and after all of this has unfolded, the baby is crying and Loretta goes and picks up the child, but obviously her mother is dead. And that's just the weight of this scenario. You know, nothing good can come from this scenario as long as there are people on opposing sides and people treating others, other human beings, like something lesser. And it's disgusting, but it's also utmost compelling in this framework because these aren't average human beings. It's kind of like that, you know, Man of Steel aesthetic where Superman came to this world. He had to fend off a bunch of villains of his own species who were, you know, matched with powers and prowess of his own kind, his own nature, but that much more because they were militaristic. And then you have the world, you know, certain segments of the world looking at him like he's the alien. He shouldn't be here. He doesn't belong. He's not like us. Very much is that what is under the microscope in this series. And being able to sort of, you know, have Nick, especially, the dynamic between he and Warwick and he and Alex and that whole trio dynamic, it lets you in on the perspective of them as the main characters, and you grow sympathetic toward them. But you're also seeing, what I really love about this series is the masterwork in touching upon these other characters as well, getting you familiar enough with Delico to be heartbroken that this is his sister. Getting you, you know, familiar with characters, of course, like Marco, who we've been introduced a few, you know, seen a few times, introduced to a few times. But now he comes to the fore as just being ultra badass in this episode. And to have the kind of foes that they do going against them, it's just like, wow. The series is proving to be a modern masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 9 of Gangsta, if you've seen it. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, all the revelations that came to the fore, were you as on the edge of your seat as I was? If not, why not? Let me know in the comments below. Love having the conversation with you guys, and we can agree to disagree, but I'm always fascinated to talk about a series like this, where the characters are utmost compelling, are very intriguing and relatable. You know, there's a level of pathos to the scenario of their story that is unfolding, and there's also the aspect of just being surprised with such revelations as, you know, who Erica is to Delico and all that kind of stuff. And, of course, Emilio, now Alex's brother, being part of this anti-movement. So, yeah. Otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.